Good morning, friends, and welcome to University Unitarian Church in Seattle, Washington. It's Sunday, December 13th, 2020, and we welcome you to our morning worship service. My name is Jon Luopa. I'm one of the ministers here with my colleague Beth Chronister and our musician Dwight Beckmeyer and special guest musician today on Zoom, Gavin Ritchie, and our tech crew. We're in the holiday season, and I'd like to invite you to a special family holiday service next Sunday at our customary time of 9:30. This will be a combination of our usual family candlelight service and the Sunday morning service, as we need to do that this year under the special pandemic restrictions. And we will also have a Christmas Eve service, which we will pre-record, but will be available on Christmas Eve beginning at 6 p.m. And you can join us then or any time during Christmas Eve or Christmas Day from the website. That service will be as close as it has been to our traditional format, and we will conclude the service by singing Silent Night together with candlelight, and we encourage you to have, if you're viewing with us, a candle yourself, which you may light to join in that closing ritual that has been so important here at University Church for, probably 50 years. Let us begin the service this morning.
Good morning. On this third week of Advent, in which we lift up joy, I call us to worship with these words from Reverend Gordon McKeeman. Deep calls unto deep. Joy calls unto joy. Light calls unto light. Let the kindling of our shared flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope, and of joy. And as one flame lights the other, nor grows the less, we pledge ourselves to be bearers of the light wherever we are. Welcome to worship this morning. Welcome to University Unitarian Church. From wherever you are, it is a joy to be together. Would you please join me now in singing our doxology, followed by hymn number 17, Every Night and Every Morn. On this morning, we will gratefully receive our morning offering in support of the life, the work, and the ministry of this church. And I would like to share with you that in this month of December, we are making a change in our special giving recipient. Generally, our tradition in years past has been to receive the offering plate during the family Christmas service and the Christmas Eve service in support of our sharing fund, which is an internal fund to help support UUC members and friends during times of personal need. This year, given the rising needs in our surrounding community and how many families are experiencing personal economic struggle, how many more people are struggling to pay their rent. This year we are changing our tradition somewhat, and we'll be collecting the offering on the 20th and on the 24th in support of our partnership with Lake City Partners Ending Homelessness here just north of the congregation. Again, on this morning, thank you for joining me and supporting the life, the work, and the ministry of this congregation. Would you please join me now in saying the words that are on the screen that we say each week? This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it. Would you please join me now in the spirit of prayer and of meditation? Holy Mother, source of life, teach me the ways of the winter woods, the stillness of the bare tree, the softness of leaves underfoot, slowly giving back to the soil, fulfilling ancient destiny. Fill my body with quiet wisdom. Tell me what you know of patience, rest, surrender. Never holding on to the last season or yearning toward the next, perfectly here, absolutely now. The softness of snow, the whistling of wind, the rush of rains, welcoming each with equal regard. Turn my mind toward the ground, the intertwining of roots underneath, growing out, growing toward the steady strength of life force shared. Turn my face to the sun, filtered through green needles and swaying limbs, dancing right here in light and shadow, bringing life's gift to the whole earth. Turn my heart to what the trees know. To everything there is a season. Life was given to be lived more abundantly. There is a unity that makes us one. Peace, the woods whisper. Peace, the trees pray. To these words and images, I invite you to add the silent longings and prayers of your own heart. Blessed be. And amen.
Friends, I'd like to begin with a short poem this morning from D.H. Lawrence. And the title of his poem is Go Deeper Than Love. Go deeper than love, he wrote, for the soul has greater depths. Love is like the grass, but the heart is wild, deep rock, molten, yet dense and permanent. Go down to your deep old heart and lose sight of yourself, for the fierce curve of our lives is moving again to the depths out of sight in the deep living heart. We all know that language can at times be helpful and clarifying. Other times it can be very confusing. Often it is descriptive, and just as often it is misleading. We know this especially today when many of us are contesting and arguing with each other over the meaning of a whole variety of words. And we are engaged endlessly, it seems, in what the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein called language games. One of the words that is the most treacherous, I think, overused, misunderstood, even abused, is the word love. It is most often used in the silliest of ways. People say, I love chocolate ice cream, or I love when the sun is out in Seattle. I love to dance. I love Brazilian cooking. I like this kind of music. I love that kind of music. I love nature. Big out here. I love nature. And I don't think this says very much about anything at all, quite frankly. Not for something that is supposed to be the most important thing in the world, love. So if it isn't too confusing, it can often be narrow and demanding. And I think we have allowed love to become so because it is narrow and demanding, and we can't live up to it and don't have the courage to stop using it or to change it. We've heard it since we were very young children, and we are imbued with the misleading characterizations of love. We're born with this in our own culture. I grew up in Sunday school learning from the Apostle Paul, love is never rude, he said, never selfish, never irritated, never resentful. What? Can you believe that? Well, that's not my experience of love. Is it your experience of love? This kind of love I do not know. I've never met it. Love never fails. Love never dies. Well, I see it dying every day all around me. Wherever there is love, you will see it die. I think is a pretty accurate statement. So if it isn't too confusing and it isn't too demanding, I think it can be very fraudulent in many ways. Do you love your enemies? That is demanding, and it is fraudulent. Do you love people who are really different than yourself? Do you? My gosh, it's hard enough sometimes just to like the people who are like us. Love them. Tough. Hard enough. Do you love your parents? Well, this is an experience that is basic to every one of us who is now alive. How many of us truly love our parents, even if they're long gone? Yet we're supposed to love them. Why? Because they're our parents. That's why. How many of us have spent years of anguish and perhaps a great deal of money on therapeutic fees as we have tried to reconcile how we truly feel about our parents with the obligation placed upon us to love them? There is an agonizing discrepancy here, which is not unfamiliar to many of us. Some of us deal with this. Many of us have buried it in the past, and yet, if unresolved, it is something that never goes away and makes itself evident in many other choices that we make as we go forward in our lives. Indeed, our unresolved issues around this do factor into the people that we say we love the most and may even choose to marry ourselves, and also affect how we are parents and grandparents. I'd like to offer a different approach this morning, if I may. And I'm going to say in the beginning, of course, that it's going to be open to just as many criticisms as I have shared with the word love. But I hope that it might shed some light on some of our fundamental necessary relationships and help us find more worth and meaning and dignity in those relationships that we have, beginning with ourselves and then, of course, with other people. And I want to suggest a different quality, a different human quality than love. And I'd like to suggest the quality of respect that I think in some ways is even more important than love. By respect, I mean an appreciation, a qualitative appreciation in the face of limitation. Respect is a kind of appreciation, a qualitative appreciation, always in the face of human limitation. The term itself involves various dimensions, various depths, various human strengths, qualities, because it depends both on the person who is doing the evaluating and the person or thing that is being evaluated. You see, unlike the word love, respect has nothing to do with sex. Love is associated primarily, I think, with sex. But respect has nothing to do with affection. You do not have to be affectionate with me to respect me. It has nothing to do with worshiping another person. Respect has nothing to do with adoration. It's non-competitive, and it's always naturally graded. You respect on different levels in different ways. Respect is based on your experience, upon your self-conscious awareness, upon the degree of your sensitivity, and on the capacity you have to respond. So it is a demanding quality, but it is not beyond any one of us, including those of us who happen to be less sensitive than other people. You cannot respect another person unless you are coming out of yourself. And the more you know about yourself in all your aspects, the more and deeper is your capacity to respect. Well, let's take a simple illustration like a baseball player, a batter hitting a ball. You can have respect for that person's eye and hand coordination, even if you only read the statistics about that player. But if you have followed baseball, and better still, if you have ever played baseball, and you have stood at a plate when someone has thrown a ball at you at 90 miles an hour, you are more capable of respect for the capacity of that person to stand there and to make the bat hit the ball. And when you respect their batting ability, you are not speaking of this person's personal qualities or their lifestyle or of any other relationships. You are basically respecting the skill that person has to hit a ball. You can respect another person's imaginative ability or their artistic skill or their logical acumen or their negotiating tact, and so on. You can respect people on any kind of level, on any kind of achievement, to any degree or proportion. A college friend of mine used to say about his father, "My father was an eminent surgeon and a complete failure as a father." And it took me years to appreciate how those two facts were not, by necessity, related. I feel that I have a growing appreciation for music, but I don't really claim to be expert in many senses about music. I have respect for people's performance, but since I am not as advanced as I'd like to be there, I don't know where the difficult transitions are. You know, we have a wonderful, wonderful music program here, and many is the time over the last 21 years when I have been so moved and so excited about the music that I rush up to Karen or to the choir members or to Dwight and say, that was magnificent. Now, I know that they are grateful to receive the compliment, and I also know that because of the level of their expertise, they know by my saying this that I didn't catch some of the things that made the piece even all the more difficult that they missed themselves and would be embarrassed by if everyone knew. But the more I understand about music, the more I learn how to sing or play an instrument, I can see where some of those difficulties are. And so if a particular piece is difficult and someone does a very fine job on it, I can respect the ability of that artist to convey that genius to us, you see. I can respect the performer all the more if I have a growing experience with what it is they are trying to do. You see, respect is always a relative kind of thing. I'm saying it depends upon the person who is the object, and it depends upon the person who is doing the respecting. It depends on your own skill, yourself, upon your understanding, upon your touch. It's a qualitative achievement. It's something you can improve, you can deepen, you can expand. And it depends on your capacity to participate, you see, to get engaged with the work itself. This is all old spiritual wisdom. I'm not making up anything new. It's not original. To me, it's wisdom that belongs to all religious and philosophical groups. We cannot respect all people on the same level. I used to work with a staff member in another church who used to tell me I could never be a minister because I don't have that, quote, all-encompassing love of humanity. And I looked at him and I said, well, I don't have it either. And I try to respect people for who they are, but some people, it's hard to respect them. It varies. It's relative. So it may look like, I love everyone alike. Well, I can't. I don't. We don't have competition in respect because people's gifts are very different to begin with. And our respect ought to be according to the gifts that every person has. This is something we know to be true, but in our hearts, but something that we don't follow often enough. To whom much has been given, from this person shall much be expected. But if we are going to give little, we still, if we have been given little, we still have the obligation and expectation of returning what we can, of doing what we can with what we have. Respect is always relative. We've been through a capital campaign. We're winding that down. We have annual giving campaigns. People have varying capacities to support the life and ministry of an organization like this. Sometimes the gift, a very tiny gift, is extraordinarily generous from one particular person and is as meaningful as a very large gift from those who have the capacity to do that, you see. It's a qualitative appreciation in face of limitation, always on the basis of limitation, on doing what we can with what we have. We certainly need more respect in our society, in our common life. It seems to have disappeared altogether. What has happened to this quality of respect? I think without it there is very little decent living. We have to start with ourselves, of course, always with ourselves. And I think that we don't really respect ourselves enough. A human being is an extraordinarily special creation, not always better than other living things, but remarkable in many ways. And I'm talking about the life that you have and the gifts that you have and the opportunities that you have. You have a capacity to see and to feel and to think and to care and to love and to sacrifice. You have a capacity to take joy in a day like this, in a season like this, in a time like this. You have a capacity to let your heart sing. And you have a capacity to be compassionate and tender for those who have been given less, for those who are bruised and damaged by the outrageous arrows of fortune and human complicity. Our ability to be tender and to be kind and generous and open is certainly wonderful, even though we never make it without these things. So we are remarkable. And unless we can respect ourselves more, it will be hard for us to respect other people, because it is in comparison, don't you think? Sometimes when you see someone else who may be gifted in a different area than yourself, you may envy it, but you also may praise it. Long ago, we had a staff member here who needed to take a leave of absence in order to complete some necessary academic work. And if the space was not made for this person to do that, we were in danger of losing them and their program. And so I asked our board if we might give this person a leave of absence with full pay. The response was, understandably, well, is it really fair? And if we do this, this staff member is just going to go somewhere else and leave us behind once she gets her degree. And I said, this place ought to be about empowering those with great gifts to serve the larger community. So if we can have a role in helping this person achieve what she needs to achieve in order to complete this program, it is most likely that she will go somewhere else. But we will have made a contribution to the larger society through that person. And that is what we are called to do. You see, it's not for ourselves alone, but it's for the greater good. So if we can help this person advance and share her gifts more widely with the wider community, that is exactly what we ought to do. You see, I believe firmly that our religion ought to be a goad for getting us to respect ourselves more and to appreciate the enormous journey we've taken from the far and distant past. If we respect ourselves, we get around to respecting our children and those who are younger than ourselves. I'm really concerned about this. The older I get more concerned about this. Earlier I spoke about the difficulty of loving one's parents. That is a great challenge. I think if children could learn to respect their parents, it would help us go a lot further. But we need to respect our children even more. Not only love them merely. Love is very often, for a parent, nothing more than an extension of oneself, a self-glorification, a way of feeding one's pride in producing such a child and nurturing such a child for oneself. And the children become often enough instruments for many of us. We make them live our life to gratify us, and we smother them with our love, and I know that they push it away so often or feel caught in it with over-expectation and over-implication, and they have to get out They have to go away. They have to do something radically different and oftentimes very offensively different from the values that we hold. And our love for them, you see, helps to destroy them and to push them away. But we need to respect our children for the human beings that they are. We are, as Khalil Gibran said, the instruments of their becoming, but we let them go. We let them go into the world to find their own inner genius and their own inner purpose. Years and years ago now, Robert Ruckhiser, who was a social commentator on a public television, a very distinguished individual from a very distinguished family, and he was asked in an interview, how is it that you became so well known and respected in your field, and also your brothers and sisters and your parents, but all of you in very different fields, almost self-canceling fields with each other? And he said, my father always wanted us to find our inner genius. And he didn't know what it was. So he didn't put on me the expectation to be something, but to find myself, to find my own identity, my deepest and truest identity. I can tell you, you know too as a parent, how hard it is to not to get caught up in this. I hope my kids do this. I hope they do that. I hope they marry this person. I hope they go there. That's just my projection. Totally meaningless. My job is really to respect them for the person they say they are becoming, to trust that, you see. We need to find a way to have children respect their parents, of course. And many of us remember learning an old commandment, the fourth commandment, to honor thy father and thy mother in the days which we have. It is important to note that the commandment is not to love your parents, but to honor, respect your parents. It's a different thing. Children then did not have to fight their parents with a kind of fraudulent love. They could respect them more and not feel guilty about it and be proud of it. The children were not the opportunity to realize that their parents have their own history, they have their own limitations, and they have those things that were put upon them that broke them and nurtured them. They had ugly experiences too, which transformed them and may even have warped them, you see. It's the stuff that gave them nightmares, I think, two of my own parents and my grandparents, and I've only come to respect them more in time because I've lived through some of the things they lived through. I often said that I never really understood what it meant to love my father and respect my father until I became a father myself. And I thought about what it must have been like in the early 50s for my dad, who was laid off with a new wife and a child to support, and the tremendous agony and burden of feeling that he was not doing what he was supposed to do because he didn't have any work. When I think of what they had to go through and then wrestle with the problems of their children in addition, and then their children criticize them for being imperfect, well, maybe they failed us, twisted us, but they gave us life. And if they didn't have 10 talents, perhaps they had only 3. And they did their damnedest to make those work. So there it is, respect and appreciation in the face of limitation. Earlier, I asked if we loved people who were different from ourselves. Do we love people who are of a different race, a different socioeconomic or educational background, people who have varying different sexual identities, political orientations. I don't think that any of them want us to love them. They want to be respected for who they are, genuinely, with dignity and integrity, as human beings who are trying to find their own way. Because we cannot love them, we get frustrated and often give up. But respect for and appreciation of difference would be an enormous first step forward in creating a healthier relationship. Most marriages could be vastly enriched if there was an abiding respect and appreciation for how two different human beings can coexist in mutual attentiveness for any period of time. That's a big thing, I can tell you. Do we respect our enemies? We know we cannot love them. Must we demonize them? Do politicians have so little respect for us that they prefer to lie to us? Is this why our political domain is so fraught with anger and betrayal? So we need to find a way back to respecting each other. We need to start where we are. And I think if we're able to do it in even small measure, we may become possessed by what I would call a wonderful hope, because we have been able to name the limitations of loving, exposed it, and lay claim by our human spirits and souls to something better. And we will advance on the basis of our qualities and our gifts by respecting ourselves, our own limitations, and then expand this to include others by respecting parents and children and friends and co-workers and neighbors and people who live all around us who we may not even know, and many millions of others in our own country and in the world. We are remarkable creatures. We have been given, if you think about it, so much. And much is expected of us in return. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is hymn number 236. That tune is a Sicilian tune, and I chose it not only for the words but also for the tune, because today, December the 13th, is the feast day of Saint Lucia, who is important in Sweden and the Nordic countries. It's the beginning of the cultural Christmas in that region of Europe. We also have the Lucia pageant in our own service. We'll have it again next week for the family holiday service. And the connection between Sicily and Sweden is that St. Lucia's body is claimed to have floated somehow from Sicily to Sweden. And so that's why we're singing the Sicilian song on December the 13th. And that's why I'm wearing my Swedish tie today in memory of my mother, who was St. Lucia in the church festival, as were my sisters and my daughters. I used to bring the girls to the big Lutheran church downtown in Hartford, where there was a great Lucia pageant, and we would sit there, and our younger daughter Ulrika would say to me, "Dad, why do they keep singing that song over and over and over and over? Once is enough." Well, anyway, there it is. It's difficult for us. We're heading into holiday the season. Hanukkah has begun. Christmas is imminent. The ways in which we will celebrate this year are probably unprecedented. Let's hope they're singular and are not repeated next year. Many of us will be alone, or certainly without all of the family and friends around the table that we would customarily have. I remind you that on Christmas Day we are making available, through the graciousness of Susan Howlett and David Bauman, an opportunity for those who are alone to join in a Zoom gathering on that special day. We hope that you can join us for our services and that you remain well. If you see God, may God be with you. If you embrace life, may life return your affection. If you seek a way, may a path be found, and the courage and the wisdom and the companionship to take it step by step. Amen.